Greetings, YouTube. I was listening to a news article on NPR recently, and it was discussing minority involvement in farming in America. It shouldn't come as any surprise that in America, 90% of the farms are owned by white people. So it's often very difficult for minority groups to get into that particular um, field because of the social acceptance of white people and the refusal to accept minority groups. And while this was being discussed, one of the people being interviewed, who owns his own farm, is a black guy. And he was discussing his interactions with both authority figures and just people within the farming community, and how he had to change his behavior and make sure his language was couched in a certain way, make sure he pronounced his words in a certain way, made sure he presented himself in like deferential in every way to make sure that they understood that he was educated and acceptable and approachable. Of course, he is, but he wasn't allowed to speak in his natural manner because he had to make sure he presented himself in a way that would be viewed as acceptable by the white people he was interacting with. That's called code switching, and we all do it. How you talk to your boss and your coworkers and your spouse are three very different things. You are not going to talk to your boss and your coworkers and your spouse in the same manner. You switch your language and your behavior as you talk to those three distinct types of people. We all do it. But for most of us, it's a very minor change, and the consequences are also minor if you were not to make those switches. For minority groups in America, if they don't make the right kinds of code switch, they can die. And since we require that of minority groups in America on a daily basis, every second of every minute of every day of their lives, that'll wear you down. That kind of social combat will grind you into the earth. They were having another discussion on NPR about the national parks and how minority groups don't use national parks in the same way because of the fact that they are not treated the same, and in many cases they are not even safe to be in them when they encounter white people. That someone birding, going out to look for birds, has had cops called on them because they're a white person. Someone else brings up the concept of geocaching. Can you imagine a black person geocaching in many places in America? Going out into obscure little places, digging around amongst trees and bushes, or pulling rocks aside to find things? How well is that going to work out for a black person if they're viewed by a white person doing it? Whereas a white person doing any of these things is just viewed as normal. And that's the crux of the problem. Black people just living, whether they're farmers or people that trying to go out and enjoy parks and national monuments, are not viewed as normal by white America. They are viewed as an aberration that must be paid attention to, that must be reported, that must be watched. And that will grind you down. I don't know if you've ever done any performing in your life in front of an audience, but it's a very different experience than just being in your own home practicing. Because when you're performing, you're being scrutinized in a way that you are not when you're in your own den reading those lines or playing that music. Now imagine you were being scrutinized like that every minute, forever. And if you messed up in the wrong way, you might die.